Hello, welcome to another episode of The Loud Lens. It is me, Khandie, and we are going to talk about why passion doesn't pay your bills, why exposure don't put food on the table, and that the struggling artist narrative needs to just stop completely because loving photography isn't enough to make it a business, okay? And I'm talking about this because so many of you are drowning, like so many financially, emotionally, and calling it dedication. You're struggling and wearing it as some sort of badge of honor. It's a noble deed. Look at me. And your landlord's sitting there going, you still got to pay your bills. And your bills are like, I still got to be paid. And your anxiety is like, oh my God, this is huge. No one will care how much you love your craft if you aren't paying your bills. I get it. You care. I know, but this is the Loud Lens, and today we're cutting through the crap with a starving artist mindset, especially photography, and calling out the self-sabotage that's been dressed up as passion. Now, I will say I am recording this both on video and for the podcast, so you can watch it on YouTube or you can watch it or listen to it on Spotify. I am hoping to branch out to others, but this is me, Khandie, in my very messy studio. This is 7:30 in the morning because I was at the MotoGP photographing for the Women's Rugby World Cup, and I needed to get this done. So this is where we're doing it. So there's a lot of high energy, no caffeine. But I want to talk about this because I went onto Facebook like I do, ready to do some networking and do some chinwags. And I got in there and I saw someone saying, hey, I've done all these mini sessions and like they're overdue and I need to get it done and I haven't got the time. I was like, mentally, I was like, you got the time to post on Facebook. But I realize people are struggling and I don't want to be that horrible person. But if someone's like, oh, outsource it. Oh, I can't afford to outsource it. How have you done all these mini sessions and not set up the infrastructure? And it's the idea that we do all this and then we go, we think about all the processes and the costs involved after. We like pick this out of the head that we need to be doing something, but we're not actually setting ourselves up for it properly. And there's this toxic trait in creative industries, particularly among us photographers, that if you're not struggling, then you're not legit. I mean, it's romanticized. I see it on marketing. I see it in Facebook groups. I see it in on like TikToks. I see it. People are like using, oh my God, I worked till 4 a.m. In fact, I've actually done it myself. I'm going to just call myself out there. I have done it myself. I would talk about my day and talk about sometimes how exhausting it is. And I negate to say I chose this because I wanted to do these projects. I wanted the money to come in because I've got planned days off planned. Because if you know you're self-employed, you literally have to pay yourself to have the time off, okay? Because there's no one giving you free holiday pay. You're not getting like paid time off like you do in a regular 9 to 5. At least I hope you get that kind of benefit. So let me be clear. Struggling doesn't mean you're dedicated. If you are truly struggling, something is broken and you're just ignoring it and you won't admit it. And I know that's a really hard thing to say, but you're not a better photographer because you're not being paid. You're not a better photographer because you're underpaid. You're exhausted and probably broke, and mentally this is starting to hurt you. And you tell yourself, this is how it starts. I'm just paying my dues. Be a sellout. I hate this whole idea of paying dues. Why can't you go straight into photography and go, this is how much I charge? Why do people go, oh, you should be doing stuff for free? I don't mind, like, if you want to go be a second shooter, I don't think I've ever had a second shooter for free. I have always paid. At one girl, she said, I need the experience. I'm really new. And I said, let me at least pay you expenses and something. I don't think I've ever had anyone work for me for free. Even my work experience people, they get some sort of remuneration. I know like we can't physically pay them a wage, but I will pay them expenses because no one should be out of pocket coming to get work experience from me. And also, I have a real ick about that. Like, I just genuinely do. I also find it really uncomfortable that photographers are expected to work for free because people somehow assume that they can pick a budget out the air and they'll be like, no, that job is this price. And then they don't ask for any, like, they don't do any research into it. And photographers are like, yeah, I'll just take it. I'll just take it. You are being exploited. And not just by the industry around you, but yourself. You are damaging yourself. And you started this whole photography thing because of passion, right? And yet you've just gone, the passion is the only thing keeping this a business afloat. But it's not. This isn't a hobby. This isn't a passion. Right? Once you become a business, you need to start treating it as a goddamn business, okay? Because while you're clinging to the love of being photography, someone with half your talent is pulling in six figures somewhere because they understood the strategy in how to run it as a business. And this goes quite often with people going, "Why don't I understand how they're making so much money? They're not even that good." Because they know what their cost is and they know how much they have to work to get that money in. They know how to upsell. They have everything in the system to make their time easier. Do you know, once I got Studio Ninja, I know this isn't like a plug for them. They are my client management software. I saved hours, because I was no longer manually inputting contracts. It was automatically updated. I created their little client record in the CRM, and then it sends out invoices. It does reminders for the shoots without me having to log in and do it. It reminds them when their gallery's gonna go. It tells them what how much they owe on an invoice. It tells them what their contract details are that they need to sign, all this stuff, and it pre-fills it for me so I could just log in and it's all there. I don't have to spend the time doing that. It's done for me. I pay for that privilege, but I set that business model, that price into my cost so I know what my cost of doing business is. So let's talk fact. You need pricing that reflects your skills and your survival in this industry. You need systems, contracts, and goddamn boundaries. Okay. You need to say no to free work, even when your fridge is empty, because it will cost you to go there. Petrol, insurance, potential risk damage. You might get some shots, but why are those people not paying for you? If it's so important for you to be there, why haven't they got a budget for it? Loving photography is not the same as being prepared to run it as a business. And too many of you are pretending it is. Okay. Too many of you are. And I've talked about this quite a lot on this podcast, that this is why I created this podcast. Okay. This is why I did my YouTube, because you can also watch this on YouTube. This is why I do what I do, because I'm fed up with this narrative coming through. And do you know what? People romanticize the struggle. They make excuses for having poor boundaries, believing that burnout is somehow part of this industry, part of this job, and look down on photographers who charge their worth and automate their workflow or the outsource. When I talked about some of the systems that I use, someone said to me, "Oh, that's great. So you don't do all the hard graft." And I was like, "No, because why would I want to do the hard graft? I'm still picking up the camera, still taking the shots, but why can't I automate my admin? Why is that such a terrible thing?" And they was like, "Oh, but I can't afford that yet." Well, you set yourself up so that you can afford it down the line, because once you get that time back, you can A, spend more time shooting if you want to, B, spend some family time, get to that gym, run that half marathon, weed the garden, walk the dog. Well, I don't know. Maybe you just want to sit in a cold room and with your duvet and watch endless reruns of Buffy. I have not done that recently. Leave me alone. You're convincing yourself that you're keeping it real, but what you're actually doing is avoiding growth. Okay. You are afraid that if you stop struggling and if you actually make money, you'll somehow lose credibility, that you'll be less artistic if you're profitable. Honestly, it's bullshit. Creativity doesn't die because you're financially secure, it thrives. You don't need to suffer for your art, and that's a lie sold to us that benefits people who keep us small. It does. I'm sorry. I see it all the time when I see people selling me some sort of like, "Oh my God, let me be a business coach to you," and they're like, and you're like, "Okay, cool," and they're like, "Oh, let's talk about your struggle and talk." No, I want to know how to upscale my business, how to make it slicker. And people are like, "You need to share your struggle a lot more. Share your struggle." People buy into it, and what they're doing is when you share your struggle, that's cool. But why don't you share your struggle and how you fix that struggle, rather than just going, this is how I suffer every day. This is what I do every day. Because I'm like, it's cute and all, but everyone's doing it, and it's kind of old hat, and it just makes you look like. For me, I've done it myself where I talk about my day, but I also talk about like, and thankfully I've got a day off tomorrow. Like I'm not here going, "Let 15 days to go see the light," and I'm like, "Come on, straight. I'm done. I'm done. Why is this a thing that happens in our industry?" What? Sorry, I just twatted the mic. But why? It's a lie sold to us that we need to be struggling. So let's look at this as why the struggle is noble and why it's such a sticky idea. Lots of us, including myself, come from working class backgrounds where the struggle was normalized. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a beautiful thing. That's part of the history of, and that's in the name, working class. But the thing is, it is almost not it's almost made a novelty, isn't it? You go on movies and the underdog is struggling and it's, oh my God, and then become good and like, I get it, it's part of our history. Now, if you know anything about my background, you'll know I had an appalling upbringing. Probably not as bad as some, but, the stuff I've disclosed, a lot of you have shared with me that you found it quite a shock to understand. And I don't think that is the norm, and I hope it's not the norm for people. But when you see on social media people talk about it and it becomes like a thing that everyone has to struggle, everyone needs to have a struggle, and it's almost weaponized for people. I get it, it sells, a sob story sells, But the idea is that people then don't talk about how they overcome it or how they do things, and I feel like we need to continue that journey on. We cannot stay in this mindset that we need to be struggling. There is no shame in being working class. Please tell, I will just tell you now, there is no shame in it. But when you tokenize it, when you make it into some sort of glorious badge, oh my God, yeah, I'm working class, I'm struggling. You need to feel pity on me. I get it. I'm going to offend a lot of people with that, but I get it. We know that we know that people look down on them on working class. We know this even after all these years later, all of this. We know this happens. But the idea is that no one talks about the stuff they do to get out of that, or the stuff they do. Like, I'm fed up with people sitting in this idea that I have to struggle because I'm from working class, so I need to keep struggling. I don't know if I've said that right. I'm probably gonna get a load of hate. I don't really know what I'm trying to say other than, like, the idea that we should all be struggling because the majority of us have come from a working class background. It's a regular thing. You should just deal with it. It's just where you need to be. You can't better yourself out of that. And I also don't want people to think that being working class is a negative thing, but it's the idea that working class need to be always be struggling. You can't not be struggling, because then that's just not right. I've also been to lectures at university where, these open lectures they do, where you can go, or they've said, like, being broke but passionate, like, keep going with your art, be passionate, keep going. And I'm like, yeah, but I also want to pay the freaking bills. I was absolutely appalled when I had some photography shoots come over. They were at a uni and they were not told about how to run photography as a business. It doesn't even come into their course. And I was like, sorry, what? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so what do they want you to, oh, they want us to graduate, but do you know about how to run a business? They're like, no. And I was like, how are you teaching me to be photographers? And then you don't touch on even small, like in a small way, about the business element. And that's what I say to people. I want to be, oh, how do I be a better photographer? I'm like, watch a load of YouTube videos. But if you want to be a successful photographer, learn how to run a business. Like, I don't know how to say it. And there's creative circles out there that feel like sometimes charging money is a bit of a sellout. Or if it's a real passion, you shouldn't charge as much. Like, if you truly knew how much it was to crochet some garments, you would be shocked if people actually charge the hours that they spent doing it. But for some reason, people can't do that because people think it's too expensive, yet they want the handmade garments. And the idea is you have to hand over all your hard-earned hours for this minimal fee. And you're like, well, now I can't really sustain myself. But that's part of being a struggling artist, so that's okay. It's not. It's really bad for your mental health. It's really bad for your bank balance. It's really bad for you to maintain a life and a home. And social media is a lot to blame for this. There were reels and reels of people sobbing about editing weddings with captions like, "I just love my clients so much. I've got so much to do." And you're like, wow, that's amazing. Did you not think to get like some systems in place to help you with all this? Did you not? Did you not? And I mean, I know I'm probably a little bit toxic when I say this, and I appreciate that you're going to call me out on it. But why has this become a thing? Oh, that's right, because we're all used to seeing people struggle, and that's a great marketing ploy. Or you get TikTokers who dramatically feel about quitting because they just can't take the pressure anymore, but it's a marketing ploy for people to realize that they struggle, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're struggling. I'm here to support you." It's another marketing ploy. We enjoy weaponizing our struggle, and then we don't talk about how we progress beyond that. It's almost like we wrap our trauma up as some sort of inspiration for others, and then we're like, "Well, that's the life. That's amazing." And it starts to build this culture that if you're doing well, you're either lucky or a fraud, and that people just, "Oh my God, she's now earning a living wage. Oh my God, that's terrible. I'm a struggling artist. I'm better than her." Nah. When my book came out, I had people telling me I had no right to write my book, and I was like, "Of course you do. Everyone has a right to write a book. But what's the problem?" And then people will be like, "Yeah, but now you're charging for it." And I'm like, "Well, I wrote a book." It's a pamphlet according to one review, but I wrote it. Why can't I earn that? And do you know how many people who've told me it helped them because it was so blunt and something new? I was buzzing my tits off when I got those reviews. And I'm very proud of it. So why can't I charge for it? And they were like, "Well, it's your first one. I think you should have given it away for free." Why? Who told you to do that? Why? Why? Do you know how many hours I put into that? Do you know how much I had to pay a copyright reader to go through and make sure it was all good? A copy reader, is that what you call them? The ones that go through and check there's no spellings mistakes and stuff. Do you know how much to get it formatted? Do you know how much it was for me to pay on the marketing to get it out there? Do you know how much I had to pay just to get, like, hundreds and hundreds? And then I only charged $6.99 for this book. Do you know that publishers told me that they wanted this book and they wanted to charge $12.99, and I point blank refused because I wanted to keep it accessible, and I knew that what my cost was to create this book versus how much I would make. I had a minimum that I needed to spend as a sorry, minimum I needed to sell to get back that money. I made that. I made that. So I knew that if I worked hard enough, I would get that sale. And I knew I had a very unique product. So I was like, I know this. So when they said, "Oh, I did at this point I knew I could have earned a lot more money, but I think for me, it was a balance between self-respect for me and knowing that this was a give back to community, but I still wanted to make my money back. I chose to do it. It was a carefully conscious choice, and I can make that choice because I had the financial setup from all my previous work as a photographer to help me do that. Success isn't shameful. Earning money doesn't make you less artistic. Wanting stability doesn't make you greedy, okay? So let's flip this script. Stop glorifying the burnout. No more. I hadn't had a day off in months. Like it's a brag, and I need to take note of that because I did that a little while back. But I wanted to be honest, like the work of a photographer sometimes is, and I made it very clear that I chose this. I can't whinge about it, but I chose it, and I was paid very well for it. Start tracking your time and treating it like money. You wouldn't work a day job for £2 an hour. So why are you doing it in your own business? Where does that mental state come from? Why are you doing it in your own business? Set financial goals. Setting financial goals isn't embarrassing. You want to earn 60K in a year? Go for it. That doesn't make you greedy. You have chosen that. Set up how much work you have to do, what your minimum is in a weekly income, and go for it. Value your emotional energy. Passion alone doesn't cover the emotional labor, the stress, or client management. It really doesn't. So you need to start billing for it, okay? And celebrate the wins that have got nothing to do with the images themselves. If you like for example, raising your rate, celebrate that. Why not? Why can't you? Saying no, celebrate saying no to that client, automating your workflow, that's success too. And I really want you to celebrate saying no. Okay. We have an industry that does not value photography. Okay. And do you know why it doesn't? Because we don't tell people no enough. But there are people out there who in businesses who go, we need a photographer. Okay. Right. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to do all of our marketing imaging. Okay, cool. What's our budget? I don't know. Maybe give them £200. And people are like, okay, let's go find a photographer, £200. And there are people going, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And you're like, that's not how much that should be. That is not. But it's because they not. And there are people who don't value themselves who will accept this £200 job that should be a 2 grand job, if not more. And they're like, that's fine. And they don't have to adjust their budget because they will do the same one year in, year out. And they know. And that's why it doesn't get valued, because we ourselves don't value ourselves enough to say, no, we want more money for this. We're like, oh, we should be so grateful for the opportunity to give this client loads and loads of work so that they can earn loads and loads of money, but not reciprocate by paying us back fairly. Isn't that's what you're doing? You whinge about the industry not paying you, but you also accept the low hanging fruit jobs, and don't tell a client, no, that budget doesn't cover this. My usual cost will be this. I said this to a client recently. They offered me a £200 job, right? They were emailing, hi, can we love your work? Blah, blah, blah. We heard great things about you. £200 job to do headshots for 90 of our clients. And I was not clients, employees. I went 90. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, nah. Told them what my real cost was and said that's how much that would typically cost. And the industry standard on this is this. And I had no problems in telling them that, because I also feel if they're not my client, they want to offer me £200. I didn't do it in an obnoxious way. I just said, and I don't, by the way, I'm sorry. I said that budget doesn't cover that this is how much I would typically charge for the industry being around this, and linked them to something I'd written. And they were like, came back and went, oh, that's out of our budget. I said, good luck. They found somebody. I saw it. Someone worked for 3 days for £200. Now, I know you'd be like, well, some people lift, that's amazing. But then you wonder how those people manage to succeed and get through, and wonder about their mental stability. Because I'll be honest, I'm mental health, because you are running yourself into the ground for £200 a day. And you might think £200 over 3 days, you might think that's a great value. That is. I mean, for some people that is. But you've also got to pay your insurance, your tax, your national insurance out of this. You've got to do your travel, or the editing time. You're not just doing 3 days work. That's 8 hours over 8 hours each day, right? That's not just that. You're also doing the editing and having the software to do that, okay? I don't think this is good for you. I don't think it's good. That is the stuff where you go, do you know what? My time is not worth that. You might get the £200 in, but then because you're having to do all that work, you're missing out on the opportunity of doing other work. There's other places you could be earning this. And I think we need to get this into our head that we need to stop it. Passion should not equal struggle, okay? This thing, you love your work, so stop demanding to pay it properly. Be paid properly. What is wrong with that? You can care deeply about your clients and still protect your time, okay? You can create meaningful, powerful art and still go on holiday, eat well, and not live in survival mode. You don't need to start buying the lie that struggle makes you better. Honestly, my thing's going off. Sorry about that. Security, assistance, and self-respect will make your work sustainable, and that's how you keep your passion alive, and I mean it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I've probably ruffled a few feathers, but that's what it is. If it made you feel, if it made you squirm and reevaluate, good. You're not meant to stick in the starving artist loop. Okay, get out of it. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to make money, and you're allowed to stop calling your struggle a lifestyle. So if you like this episode, tag it with a friend who's struggling, share it. I hope I did okay. If I've said something wrong, I'd love to in discussion. I'm open for education myself, but I would love to see you all tag me, Khandie photo on Instagram. I will hype you up. I love all this. Until next time, look at your cost of doing business. Start with the strategy, and as always, stay proud of who you are. You've chosen to be a professional photographer. Stop treating it as a hobby. And I'll catch you all in the next podcast episode. Or if you watch this on YouTube, I know I look like Ronald McDonald's long lost sister. But yeah, take care of you.